All right. Great. Nice to meet you, Spiridita, and thank you for taking the time and being in this initiative, meaningful conversation. So if we want to kick off this conversation with a question, who are you as a human being?
Hi, Marwan, and thank you. And even before I reply to this question, I would like to say that I really appreciate the title of this series because one of the things we have too many are too many words without meaning in
Yeah.
our society. We're bombarded with lots of information and just noise. So the idea of going back to having conversations that are meaningful, it's really key.
Yeah.
It's really one of the key elements that we need to implement more and more, because that also implies, again, our ability to listen to each other, which is
Mhm.
fundamental. Because
Yeah.
if everybody just talks, we're never going to get to an agreement and we're not going to be able to build a different future. So, with this answer I gave you,
Yeah.
it's already an introduction for myself. I am a psychosociologist, that is a sociologist that studies the changes in collective psychology and how they apply to society.
Mm.
So I study the big changes, the big transformations, and it's very interesting because my field of interest and work spans from the study of the eternal archetypes that move people throughout all times and all eras to the minute changes that happen, for instance, when something like a pandemic happens.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting field of exploration and work. And for me, to make it more meaningful, for me, 28 years ago, I chose to start living in an intentional community. That means a society that has been created by people that, like me, wanted to say, okay, what would it take if we were to rethink all the different aspects of life
Mm.
outside of the normal way of thinking, and yet in harmony with the eternal cycles of life and nature and the cosmos and the deep needs of every human being to be loved and nurtured.
Yeah, and this is interesting. And actually, I remember a story that you've been working in a very well-known organization with a very great position, and then you took a decision just to leave that organization and start following your bliss or following your passion. So, how this shift happened in your life?
I am one of those people that since young, and I'm sure you're one of those, I felt that I wanted to make a change in the world.
Hmm.
I felt, okay, this is okay, but we could make it better together. So my first job really was at the European Parliament. I was lucky. I was very young, and so that gave me a very good training. And then from there, I moved to New York, and I worked for an agency that collaborated with the United Nations. So again, I had another exposure, and especially there, I was working with rights of women and
Hmm.
inclusiveness for women. And this was many years ago, so it was really pioneering work. Then I moved back to Italy. I was working with different international organizations based with a base in Italy, again towards inclusiveness. And then on my path came this community. A friend of mine talked to me about this group of people that were doing this drastic experiment that was very deeply rooted in spirituality. And what I understood is that if I wanted to bring change, I really had to be the change. And I know
Hmm.
that everybody uses this sentence because it's a very sentence of Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah.
But at that moment, and I was 29 at that time, I felt it was really key for me to start transforming myself and really seeing, what was I was willing to try out to make my ideas come true. And so that's when I made that decision. And
Have you
now
had?
I hope I can bridge both things. I still love to work with organizations and think about our planet and on a larger scale,
Yeah.
systemic thinking. But now I have the experience of the everyday life and every single little step that can take us to make the big steps.
This is fascinating. So, have you had any regret, like leaving from stable, well-known, good job to the unknown?
Regrets, no. Challenges, yes.
Yes.
But no. Regrets is not also is not a part of me. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not a person that really dwells very much in what has been. I'm always thinking, okay, what have I learned? What can I learn more? And let's go on.
Yeah.
I think also, you know, at my age, at this point in my life, what is really important for me is to really start thinking, what is going to be my legacy? You know, the most important thing I can do now is for the younger generations. So, you know, regret
Yeah.
doesn't go there.
So speaking of legacy, then what is your legacy that you want to leave behind?
Okay, so I hope I'm not going to leave it tomorrow, you know, I have a little bit more time. But really what I love to be doing more and more is to really be in meaningful conversations that turn into action on how we can rethink the way we live on our planet as just one humanity. And, you know, COVID-19, unfortunately in a negative way, has shown us that we're just one planet, but we can take that and turn it very positively and see is the first time ever that we can have a whole conversation, focus the attention of the whole of humanity on one theme. What would happen if we could turn that on, you know, environmental crisis, education, inclusiveness, respect of differences? That would be a completely different planet if we could do that. And COVID has proved to us that we have the technology, we have the possibilities. So why don't we turn it towards creating something beautiful and not just fear, or mostly fear? You know, this narrative of the virus as a war and as an enemy has not been helping us very much. It's been creating a lot of fear. Yet the technologies that are being developed now, and this connectiveness, even the fact that you and I are having this conversation, shows us that we can take all of this and really use it to make a quantum leap in consciousness.
So two questions in one. First, now you are living in Italy and being there and seeing the situation of COVID. How is people can look at this from different perspective? Second question is, how can we change our narrative, either through this crisis that we are going through, or the pandemic, or and any challenges that we face in our life?
You mean the narrative in general on how we live on the planet, or the narrative on the virus?
On the virus, how can we change it from our perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there are fantastic examples of this. For instance, New Zealand, you know, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who's a woman, she applied very strict rules, because strict rules are very important to protect ourselves. And, you know, we have to understand that that's our responsibility to protect others, especially those that can be the weaker ones. She never, though, spoke of war. She always spoke of a moment of pause in which everybody had to look out for each other, be more helpful to each other, really showing the love of your neighbor and all of your community out of responsibility. She even went online on Facebook to speak to children. And on Easter Day, she said, you know, kids, I know you might be worried because the Easter bunny, who's a tradition in New Zealand, maybe you're worried that it's not coming because of the pandemics, but I want to tell you, the Easter bunny is an essential worker, so he will be coming. So this is incredible to have a prime minister that chooses to speak directly to children, because she understands, having children herself, that this crisis is creating a lot of fear, and that's not what we need. We need to really tell the story of, this is a marathon, this is going to be a long thing, let's be together, let's help each other, because it's very dangerous, you know, and this is from a sociological and psychological point of view. If we speak of an enemy that we cannot see, because our brain cannot contain this, then we start seeing enemies that we can see, right? So then the enemy can become your neighbor, or the person that you meet at the supermarket, because you think, oh, and that's not the attitude we need to have. We need to be responsible, protect each other, but be also compassionate, knowing that we're all in the same crisis together, and the people next to me are not my enemies. They're people having the same problems, difficulties, and challenges that I have.
Yeah.
So this is key to change the narrative.
Yeah, and this is actually, it might be scary, and that we are building a story for ourselves from time to time, until we see enemies everywhere. Exactly. And to start creating a problem, and how we shift this perspective can make a huge difference.
Yes, also because otherwise, you know, we risk, I've seen it in Italy, we really have given up our basic rights in the name of this invisible enemy that was the virus. And again, it is very important to protect ourselves and to be responsible. But when a government takes on on itself to pass all sorts of restrictions that really are maybe not even that necessary, then you start thinking, what is really preparing this for? Is it preparing us for more dictatorships? This is what people are really worried about. And in Europe, we have really kind of felt it. I was in Switzerland for parts of the lockdown, and I saw how different it was, the way, again, it was approached. Yes, they closed down. Yes, there was social distancing, but there was never this atmosphere of fear, terror, and paranoia that was created in Italy. So the government can choose how you make your people responsible, or you want to make them all scared and maybe prepare them to accept vaccination that has not even really been tested.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. So for the normal human being now, what are the steps that he or she can take so they can change their perspective? Either this time or in any challenges that they are going through.
Well, I would say, you know, whatever we are bombarded with news, they are telling always the same story. Maybe ask yourself, is this the only possible way of looking at it? Or are there other ways? What if these were partially true, but what if there could also be another way of looking at it? And then I would say really, really make our bonds with the people we love, our friends, our community much stronger. Because if there is one thing that this pandemic is showing us is how important the people near us are. So this is maybe, if we turn this into in a positive way, we can imagine a future in which we understand and we feel we're just one humanity, and we can have global conversations on how we become more resilient, how we solve the crisis we're in. And at the same time, we reinforce our bonds with the land, the territory, our culture, and we recuperate it, languages, habits, cultures, in the greatest possible respect for all diversities. So these two things, you know, one planet and then local love for the people, the traditions, the land, the food that is there where we are.
It's really incredible perspective. So why people or individuals can think of the whole planet? Isn't it the work of government? So this is my question come to them. So they just taking care of their smaller society. Why should they think of a global perspective or a global planet?
Why should they, or why they're not? Why should they? Well, because with the crisis we're in now, the environmental crisis, we are seeing that this is a global planetary crisis, and there's no government that can protect their people unless we start engaging in a conversation that looks at the whole system of the planet. You know, there are millions of climate refugees already, millions of them. And Europe cannot say we're going to build walls to keep them out. This is not going to work. It's impossible. And these people live on the same planet. They have the same rights to live as we have, and also the same responsibilities. So I think it's time that we start thinking of rights as well as responsibilities. What are my responsibilities as a citizen? How do I eat? How do I consume? You know, what is my lifestyle like? What can I change? Because what I'm doing here has consequences on another part of the world, but then that will come back to me. And this is what we're seeing now. And again, the positive aspect of this, that we are seeing more and more the interconnectedness of life and the intelligence of nature that is resilient, that comes back. We see it also with the pause of the pandemic. How much the skies have become bluer, and you know, in Venice, for the first time in centuries, the waters are transparent. You know, incredible things. So we can see that nature can regenerate herself if we give her the possibility. And to do this, we need to think around the world and understand no one is going to be safe in their small squares. So governments should, of course, take care of the people and have an intelligent, meaningful conversation to take actions that then have a global scale.
So now, how do you see, from your perspective, then the world after this pandemic?
Well, I want to be optimistic. I mean, there are two possible scenarios here, right? So one is that we go towards more and more dictatorships, that we go into this horrible future where there is technology tracing us, controlling us, and we really lose a lot of our humanity, because then we are going to be living in fear, and we don't know really what kind of, you know, adjustments our psyche will need to make to be able to live like that. And that's the horror part. But I would like to think that we're going to be able to go out of this extreme polarity, this duality, to look at, you know, in the eyes of our children and say, hey, maybe I can do better than this. Maybe it's time that we shift and we go towards more union, more resilience. And again, you know, this idea we're all one on spaceship Earth. And we need to start taking care of the Earth, so the Earth then will in turn take care of us. But really going out of this idea of duality, I feel from a philosophical point of view that as a species, we have experienced and explored duality and polarization in in every possible way. And maybe this is time that we turn that and we start to explore unity, keeping the experience of the duality, which means the respect of diversity, but that we orient our thoughts, our souls, our hearts toward a new unity.
Yeah, this is fascinating. So I choose actually to go to the positive side and think of it and work toward it, because this is where we need as a human is connection and compassion toward each other and toward the planet. So now, shifting gear to the corporate world and organization, but before I go there and to know your work with the organizations, I want to know a little bit more about the work that you are doing in Damanhur in Italy. What type of work that you are doing there?
I am also, when I'm here, I work a lot with the world. So a big part of my work is to have this kind of conversations and inspire people. So I do webinars online, and when I'm here also, I teach about how can we build a new future. I am also a teacher of meditation and different techniques. So not just meditation, sitting in silence, but how can we use our mind to start manifesting a timeline where the future that we want is happening. So how do we tune our heart, our mind, our emotions towards that? Because, you know, in the end, everything that we do is a choice. So we really don't know what the future brings, but we can choose to do, as you were saying, everything we can and orient our feelings and our thoughts toward the creation of a more positive future. And that definitely is going to make us happier. And if we're happier, we're healthier because our immune system is stronger. So, you know, the case for being pessimistic and not doing anything, just saying, okay, things are just going to be bad, is not a very intelligent position, because it doesn't even work in tune with how nature has built us. Our body is built for people that have a happy psyche and a happy attitude. Then we can be stronger.
Yeah, this is great. So how can we bring this, or how do you bring this work to the corporate?
Well, you know, today the corporate world is often more powerful than the governments.
Yes.
So having these kind of conversations and in that context is crucial, because in the end, corporate world is made of human beings. They're just like you and I. So my personal approach would be is to work with human beings and say, hey, you're a human being, you make a difference. Don't just identify yourself with the organization, because otherwise we lose the power of our choices when we say, well, I'm just, you know, one in the organization. That's what the organization chooses. And the organizations, when they're big and strong, they do take a sort of, you know, they become an entity of their own. Of course, there is an energetic container of that organization that then in turn guides people. But people together can choose also to change that and really choose to take responsibility and use the power of these organizations for changing things in the future, for opening to more creativity, to more interconnectedness, to more compassion. Because one of the great tragedy of the last century has been also this separation between work and life. And I think that now, again, this pause has made so many more of us realize, well, actually, when I'm working, this is the greatest part of my life. How can I make them become one in a way that I feel whole, complete, and happy? So I think this is the great transition. And for this also, we need a new narrative. Fundamental, a new storytelling of why are corporations there? Who are the people that make the corporation? Where are we going?
Exactly. And now, for example, for the leadership in any organization, or the CEO or the leader, mostly they are thinking of profit, which is fair to think of, and growth, and this is why they exist. The question is, how can we bring the other perspective, which is the purpose? And how can they see the importance of it, if it is important? Importance of purpose, of compassion, of people.
Yeah, again, I think that can only happen with a profound inner transformation of understanding, also for them, also for the big heads of organization. What is it that really makes them happy? Because many of the people that I've met in those positions are not really happy. They work all the time. They're super stressed. They really do not have a life. So really, maybe what we're starting to see now is that time is the most precious asset we have, much more precious than money. The time to develop yourself as a person, the time to be with the people you love, the time to feel you're creative, the time you're feeling that your life is really meaningful. So maybe we can start telling a different story where we give more value to time, less to money, and then in that space that time creates, and time and space in our universe are just one thing. So, you know, in that space that opens, how can we rethink society? Because, you know, even good, great corporations will not work, exist anymore if we have a major crisis that wipes away, you know, parts of the planet because the climate thing is going really completely crazy. Yeah, unless people choose to deny it, you know, and we know that there are people that deny that we are actually in a, you know, climate crisis. But
yeah, I agree. And is there a difference between, let's say, a purposeful organization than other one?
Well, of course, because you see that in a purposeful organization, people feel more connected to each other, and this gives meaning to their life. And I think we're now need to go to the next step. Purpose is not enough. I think it has to be purpose and connection.
Yeah.
Because if an organization just has one purpose for their organization, I think is not enough for the next level of crisis management and transformation that we need to do. So it's purpose and how do I connect to the whole, just like nature does. I mean, of course, every living plant has a purpose that has to continue living and expand, but then the environment self-regulates in a way that, you know, they tend to be able to all live together. Only when we have plants that are not from that area, then they grow too much and they kill all the others, but this was never intended by nature. So the same thing, an organization, in their purpose, it's important they have the purpose, but their purpose be in harmony with that of others.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, you are speaking of life, and what is your perspective, or how do you see life?
How do I see life?
Yeah.
Well, you know, from a more spiritual point of view, I would say that life is a journey to give meaning to everything we do, to enjoy everything we do in harmony, so that we can give these sensations back to the absolute, so the divine, as you want. So in a sense, we are the senses of the divine incarnated to enjoy the world of forms, this world around us. but we are not physical beings. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. So if we look at life from that perspective, we also understand why it is so important to connect, to love, to think of the needs and the happiness of others, because this is what life is about. Our planet has enough for everyone. She's showing us constantly that she can support life in all its diversity. But we tend to forget that. So maybe life now, and in other times could be different, but now maybe it's also part of this re-education in which we remember who we really are and how it is to be fully human on this beautiful planet.
This is fascinating. So now we are approaching to the end. I still have like a couple of questions. One is now, what is the journey that you wanna go ahead with for the next years as individual? What do you want to bring to the life?
What I really want to bring to life now is to use internet to help raise consciousness even more. So taking more of my work and process with meditation and energy through the internet to support the transformation of many more people and many more organizations around the world, and creating an energetic network, because I believe that now it is possible. And at the same time, I want to support the creation of more and more physical communities, helping people that want to live together. I mean community, you know, in the broadest sense, work together also, live together, work together, but with this idea of we are one interconnected organism. And how can we do that? How can we go from vertical society, vertical organization, vertical work community to more round without losing the ability of making decisions and having a vision? Because that was also one of the problems in the past when you try, you know, too circular, then you tend losing the direction. But now we have social technologies and enough awareness that we can combine the two, and making the world also a little more feminine, which doesn't mean necessarily more women, because even though that would be very nice, and women are awakening very quickly, but what I mean also in men, awakening that part of compassion, of union, connection that every human being has. Because every human being, no matter the gender, we have a masculine and a feminine part in us, like we have a left and a right side of the brain. So we are meant to be able to unite this duality within us and outside of us. So much more feminine, a more feminine world, I think, would really help now.
Yeah, and this takes me to the last question now. Let's imagine that you on the street, you met a strange person and he asked you for advice for life. What would you say to him or her?
To always look for questions, because the answers, we all have them inside, but we need to find the questions to bring those answers to life. And never, you know, never stop at the first answer. Go for more questions, more questions, more questions.
I love this. Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you so much, Marwan.
Thank you for coming here and sharing your wisdom. Really precious.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.